Let's go to your podcast because, what is Hitlab Creative Studios and how did you start that?
So in 2020, the world's changing a lot, right? And we're making we kind of got to a spot in our journey in insurance where there was some other opportunities that were starting to unveil themselves, and we had to figure out how to be able to do those ethically and in line with all the contracts that we had in insurance. And that was the year that I met Brad. And I went on Brad's podcast in 2020. And at the time, I went on his podcast, because I liked him. And I wanted to learn more about him. But at the time, I thought podcasts were dumb. This is not that long ago. I didn't listen to any of them. I thought it was just bad radio. After I saw his podcast studio, and then the moment his podcast aired, I think I got like 10,000 new followers on Instagram overnight. I was like, all right, well, cool, I was wrong. And we're doing that. So I came home and immediately we started figuring out how to build a studio that would do a lot of the things that his did, just I didn't have the budget that he had and the space and everything else. And I built this really kick-ass state-of-the-art studio, and I started my podcast. Well, right after that, then I created problems for myself. Like, all right, well, who edits and distributes this stuff? And then how do we promote it online? So I started building a creative team for my stuff. Then people started asking me, hey, can I rent your studio? And then that turned into, hey, could I hire your team? So the Hitlab, that little agency came out of just need. It was like, I think we got a business here. And it took us a couple of years to figure out what that business model looked like, where we fit in the marketplace, who we could really help and whatnot, and how to do that. So that's where the Hitlab came from. The Hitstreak was always my podcast. Anytime you can have hits in music and in baseball, right? And in college, I was on a music and a baseball scholarship. And you have a streak.
I didn't know you were on music scholarship.
Yeah, as a drummer.
Oh wow,
as a drummer. Cool. So I started doing that. Actually, Robert cool. Brown, a guy from Overton, who was my best friend in high school, he played drums. And on the bus one day, he played drums on his lap, and I was like, well, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I started playing drums, got a scholarship, and but if you can have a streak of hits in music or in baseball, that's a good thing. That's where the Hit Streak title came from.
Okay.
And then it was just like Brad said, hey, the one of the best content sources you can have is a podcast, because it's high production and you're the expert, right? You're at least an authoritative figure.
Yeah.
And then the other thing he was like, there's people you should be doing business with that won't take your phone call, but they will when you have a podcast.
Interesting.
And I was like, so it's a networking tool? He's like, yep. And he was true. It was 100% fact. So my podcast, it's monetized now. It's a great revenue stream. However, for the first 2 years, it was the best networking tool, the best tool in my tool belt for growing business, period. Owners of the Nashville Soccer Club, you've been a guest. Literally people that I have no business talking to on a day-to-day basis. Now I'm associated with them online forever. They take my phone call. We did something great together. We collaborated on something that changed some lives, and now all of a sudden we're forever associated together. I'm getting to work with Coach Tim Corbin, or songwriters, musicians, executives, guys that run billion-dollar companies. Why else would they sit and talk to Nick for 2 hours?
Yeah, that's a great point.
So it changed our whole aspect. Now, the first year we had it was a massive expense. And, my wife's amazing, but, there was a lot of conversations like, gosh, man, how much longer are you going to do that? Because think about that. You spent, $130,000 on that last year, Nick. What could we have done with that? Where's the return on that?
Yeah, exactly.
But the relationships have been she's got great relationships because of that podcast, So the return on investment for the podcast was relationships, but then it was my job to go get a return on those relationships next.
That's right. What is the goal now with the podcast?
My goal from starting it from day one. So I'm the voice of a Sirius XM radio station called Y'all Alternative.
Okay.
All right. So for instance, as we sit today, it's in-app only. However, it's always on, it's been on channel 55, been on channel 303. They bring it back based on when, what's the big festival out in Cali? Stagecoach, is that it? Yep. So they had a big thing. It was on, I think, channel 50, 55 for Stagecoach. I had to record a whole bunch of stuff promoting the Stagecoach lineup and whatnot. I have a great relationship with SiriusXM. My goal is that my podcast will be picked up by SiriusXM. So everything that we've done, what I know that what's when SiriusXM buys the rights to a podcast, what I know, I'm sure there's more, but what I know they buy when they do that, since day one we've been building that catalog up so that it's purchase ready whenever they're ready to make that move.